Hello, stream. I had to check my microphone because apparently I will never turn those on. Good morning. It is a lovely Sunday morning, and I'm here with not Luthera, or you might know him
Oh,
as
hi.
the husband, or you might know him as Quentin on Tuesdays. He's a man of many names, and today his name is Flax. Um, so, for those of you that don't know what this is started out as a grand experiment, and I have decided to keep it running as a lore builder. So, what you're going to be seeing today is going to feel a little bit like D&D, and we're going to be using D&D character sheets, and I'm going to be using D&D rules, and I'm putting air quotes around that because I hand wave through a lot of the rules. But what you're mostly going to hear today is us tell a story together. I look for a conflict and a magical item, and I try and weave it together into about 2 hours of content. I work with the player who brings me a character I've never seen before, and we improvise everything that comes up. This is kind of the extreme opposite end of what I usually do, which is plan everything down to the millisecond. And it's a way for me to practice improvising, which is something I'm not particularly good at without practice. So, with that, I will let Flax introduce himself. What would you like to share with our stream today?
Well, Flax Hillborne is is it meadow folk?
You can go ahead and introduce
Yeah.
yourself before you introduce Flax, because we'll get
Oh,
into Flax afterward.
great. Well, then I'm Aaron, also known as Nat Luthera in all of the places. Um, I play Overwatch, or sometimes we play Borderlands on stream, not very often.
Or
Do a lot
Minecraft.
of 3D printing and mini painting, though less painting as of late. Need to get back on that.
Lots of
And
printing,
then
though.
lots of D&D. Yeah, lots of printing,
I
lots
just
of
got
D&D,
this as a toy,
lots of 3D modeling.
which I'm really excited about.
Oh yeah, I printed that last night.
I can't stop fiddling with it.
Yeah. Yeah.
And when we say he is sometimes known as the husband, he is known as my husband. This is my
Yeah.
husband. He's mine.
Tyler says that the
I
Discord
saw.
audio is low.
I'm working
Oh,
on it.
okay.
You just gotta talk louder.
I don't want to.
I see what's happening. Okay. Okay, that should be alright.
Yep. Talking, saying words.
How's that, Tyler? We have to wait a little bit for Tyler to respond, and
Yeah.
filling that time with talking is always a good idea.
Great.
Says it's good. Thanks, Tyler. Um, right, so you've built this character. Tell me all about Flax.
So Flax Hillborn is a male Meadowguard mouse folk.
Sorry, what was that? Male Meadow Guard?
Meadowguard mouse folk.
Okay.
So they
See.
live kind of on the edges of the wilderness. Not very city based, very rural. They kind of protect the borders and the lands, both from the city and the opposite. So he roams his territory, checking on things, keeping an eye on like the local deer population, or if there's a particular blight in an area, or if there's a bandit stronghold that's screwing up a river, or all kinds of stuff like that. So he keeps an eye out for that sort of thing.
Okay. What's he look like?
I think mouse folk are, what are they? They're 3 foot, 4 foot, so they're not huge.
Oh, I thought they were like
But they're
mice.
sorry, he's 2'5". Oh no, he's not mouse, but he's 2'5". Sorry,
Okay,
I
so
had added a foot or two on that.
this is a homebrew class that I'm unfamiliar with. So we will be learning all kinds of new things together.
Yeah, it's a pretty popular homebrew class. Like it's been around for a while, and somebody just put it in the homebrew.
I'm familiar with
Um,
Mouse Guard. That's
but
another
yeah,
tabletop
it's
RPG. It's based
well,
off
this
the.
is a meadow guard, not a mouse guard. Wink.
Oh, my
Um,
apologies. Yes, if,
but
Mouse,
yeah, I think it's very much related to mouse guard, just
Ma-
imported to D&D.
Mouse Guard is based off the Burning Wheel
Yeah.
RPG, which is quite good. I don't use it myself because it's very crunchy, but it's very well balanced from what I can
If
see.
you like crunchy, yeah.
If you like
that
crunchy,
is-
it's great.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of handles there to figure out how to
Right.
build stuff, which it can be very good for
Yeah.
certain games. But sorry, this is Meadow Guard, so a little bit different.
I think that's more the clan, so like the different types of like halflings and things like that. It's kind of their like regional variant.
So is he more from the
Um,
forest or the meadow then, being a meadow guard?
More of kind of that space that borders,
Okay.
a lot of like open prairie on the regular, but it's close enough that he has some experience in forests, things like that.
Okay. Very
Um,
cool.
so he's like the back acreage sort of setting,
Mm-hmm.
keeping maintained on that. Modern equivalent would be like I have an uncle that used to work for like 3M, and like they own all kinds of land for like water reservoirs and just preserves and things, and he would just make sure the fences were intact and
Mm-hmm.
keep an eye on that sort of thing. So a similar role, to, like a park ranger, I guess.
Okay. Now, so he's 2.5 feet tall. So he's a
Mm-hmm.
little fella. Now,
Yeah.
does he wear like a belt? Does he have any weapons? Does he have a fancy vest or a cute
Does
hat? What's he
yeah.
got?
So he's got a short coat, so it's not like a long duster or anything like that, but
Mm-hmm.
it's um a leather short coat, and he's got a nice big wide belt. Um, on the belt, he's got some hand axes on each hip, um, and underneath the coat is some chainmail, so he's a bit protected.
Okay.
On his back, he's got what would be probably a long sword for a standard humanoid,
Mm-hmm.
maybe a broadsword. But for him, it's a great sword. Um, just proportionally, it's much larger. Um, so he would handle it like that. And he's got his pack. He kind of sleeps where he is for the day, that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
No real home. He might stay with some people if he's passing through and gotten to know him, that sort of thing.
So he's a
Um,
loner.
he's a loner out of necessity, not out of desire. Like he doesn't dislike people, but
Yeah.
like his work calls for it. Um,
Who gave him this job? Like, where would he have gotten this responsibility?
I think it's just culturally the mouse folk, at least in this region, kind of take on the duty of you know being that kind of park ranger type thing. Now they do have settlements and things, but they tend to be smaller. And a lot of them just kind of when you grow up, like you find a job as the smith or maybe the postal in town. Like I feel like post is very important for them to stay connected, as in like packages.
Mm-hmm.
Um, the town doctor, those sorts of things, or you're one of these rangers that goes out. And I don't think they might not even really have a name for it. It's just what you do. You either you're in town doing one of these sedentary roles that's in one spot because again the work necessitates it. Mostly because people need to be able to find you, and if you're
Right.
out running
Yeah.
around, you can be the best doctor in the world. But if they can't find you, it doesn't
Oh,
matter.
sure. Yeah, that makes sense.
Um, or you need like a forge.
Now,
Uh,
does he come from a large family? Like, is he an only child, or
um,
is this one of the rare characters that has a happy set of parents still living at home? Or
well, I don't know that they're living at home. I think I think there definitely are homes, and I'm of course walking through all of this as we're talking
oh
about
yeah,
the
we are
questions.
making shit up on the spot.
Yeah, I think at least in his region, not even just his village, it's, would use the term loosely. Um, they have family homes, so
Hmm.
like what's the word I'm looking for? I mean, family homes may be the best I can come up with at the moment, but it's like your grandfather's grandfather's grandfather, the family always lives here sort of thing as a place for people to return to.
Hmm.
But again, culturally, they're out and they're roaming, and nobody stays there. You might have a room that you prefer, that sort of thing, and
Well,
you
you
might have like a
you
cabinet.
referenced small settlements, so are his
Yeah.
family more one of the sedentary type, or are they more of the wanderers?
No, I don't think that's bound to any one particular family.
Hmm.
I don't think there's any particular shame in the sedentary roles. It's, if you happen to be really good at it, you do that.
That's not what I meant.
Um,
Maybe sedentary
yeah.
isn't the right word, but like
No, that's the word I used, but
so I see here
stationary maybe.
that you've got settlements of mousefolk, and then one of the jobs that you grew up and do could be ranging out and protecting the territory.
I think that's the default, unless you're good at or have a particular interest in one of the other roles that require
Ah,
stationary.
okay. So protecting the territory is sort of the everyman,
Yeah.
and unless you have a special skill set like
Hmm.
being a doctor.
Right. Or you're
So
really good with making stuff,
So what would
or
have
the rare occasion would be like ambassadors or diplomacy, that sort of thing, where you're engaging with like
well
the
that
bigger cities and things like that.
that again is a special skill, right?
Right.
I find
That
it
would, I think, would be the
interesting.
rarest. But
I find it interesting that the sort of everyman thing is this protecting the forest. So,
hmm
tell me a little bit more about that. Are there let's call them protectors, because ranger would get a little confusing with the
Sure.
classes. So is
Yeah.
that all, does that sound all right?
Yeah, that's fine.
So
Yeah.
with the protector corps, are they organized in some way, or are they do they figure out
Um,
their own territories as they go? Is this sort of like one day they just like buy pop and
yeah.
they head off into the woods, or
I think there's a few things. One, I don't think it's highly organized, but the only reason it's not is because they all grow up learning this. Like they all grow up with this as part of their blood, that sort of thing. I think one of the more stationary times in their life is when they are raising kids, um, until that litter is old enough to go out on their own or go out with them, um, which might be the case. They might divvy up the kids and maybe foster on it for a couple of weeks and trade around and travel together. Um, uh, but I don't think overall they're highly organized. I don't think there's like necessarily reporting structure like every week. But if there's a big emergency or something, they can call like a moot, no, maybe not a moot per se, but call a meeting together and hey, there's this big problem in this valley region. We need some more support over here. Also, we're not sure quite what to do with it because this is something new or something on the larger scale that could impact your other areas, that sort of thing.
okay? So
I,
what's Flax's whole deal? Does he love what he's doing? Is he, is he reluctant to
yeah,
do this? Does he wish he had another skill?
no, I don't think so. I think he's very happy and content with what he's doing.
Mm-hmm.
It's very satisfying. It's
What does he
working the
find?
land sort of thing.
What does he find satisfying about it? Is it like tree husbandry? Is it knowing everything about deer? Is it being able to eradicate that one invasive weed? What's
I think it's a
his knowledge of the
combination
hills?
of yeah, I think it's a combination of being in tune with the land, in touch with the land around you, and the animals and all that comes with that, and also being able to give back. And I think in large part, a lot of the work they do definitely benefits more than just them.
Oh, sure.
Like it's not just done for the mouse folk, and it's not just done for the wilds. It's also done for the humans in the cities,
Mm-hmm.
the elves, all these other things. But if they're
Ecosystems. Yeah.
doing, that's the best word for it, the ecosystem. It's maintaining the ecosystem, and if they're doing their job well, um, they're not noticed and they don't get credit.
Yeah. So we're talking
Like their
about a lot
job is
of
not for glory necessarily.
yeah. So I love the idea of this society, and we could probably talk for days about this.
hmm
So I'm trying to guide you more towards sort of Flax specific things, and you
Sure.
keep going back out to the big stuff. So let's try and zoom in a
Okay.
little bit on Flax.
hmm
What would a day in the life of Flax look like specifically?
I think he'd wake up. He'd kind of run like as he's making breakfast and eating and whatever. He'd run through the stuff he did the day before.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Kind of any of the long-term things he's keeping an eye on. What's the population of this thing over here? What's the status of the seasonal events? Those sorts of things. Oh, it's the dry season. I better go out and clear out this brush so that um, they might like he might weave like paths through like the fields so that like there's breaks. So if there is a fire, it doesn't just cut across. They'll at least have time to slow it down. If not, just have it stop completely.
Too
That
soon,
sort of
bro.
thing.
Too soon.
It actually wasn't have anything to do with that, but yeah, that's relevant.
Okay.
Um,
What? I have another question for you before we keep
mhm.
going there. What drove you to build Flax as a character? What?
You like Mouse Guard, and I saw Mouse Folk, and I thought I'd build a Mouse Folk.
That's literally the only reason you built this.
That's where I
Just
started.
okay.
Um,
Yeah.
but then I kind of started leaning. I'm not sure how much to say out loud, but
Say all of it out
um,
loud. This is the place to say
okay,
that out
yeah,
loud. Yeah.
I guess so.
And I
You
want
know,
to I
like
want
to
to
have
highlight.
reveals,
I
but
know you like to have reveals, and
I know.
I want to talk about that for a second. So
Yeah,
that is absolutely normal in a D&D game
hmm
is keeping those
yeah,
reveals, but in this right here, this is where we build stuff you'd want to be revealed.
hmm
One of these that
right.
I did, I actually wove into one of the Broken Bane campaigns, so there's getting fun reveals there. So now's the time. Tell me everything.
So I started with the Mousefolk idea. I was like, I've been wanting to make a Mousefolk character forever, just in general, but I also know you like Mouse Guard.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um, and I've always liked what are there's two different books.
Redwall.
Oh, I haven't, no, not the Mouse Guard stuff directly. I haven't actually read any of those.
Redwall is not Mouse Guard.
Oh, it's not? Okay. See, I
No.
haven't read that either. So then there's four books.
You
Um,
haven't read Redwall?
no,
Oh my
there's,
goodness.
there's one that's called The Littles, I think.
You can't play this. You can't play this character without having read Redwall. I don't know if I can handle this.
There's a couple of books where like there's little tiny like basically humans with like mouse tails that live in the walls, that sort of thing. Not
What?
Stuart Little. Ugh. Oh, you didn't know? I read those growing up.
Oh my god.
We'll have to find them.
I am learning so much
Anyway.
about you today.
I started with the idea that like the mouse folk, and I was actually playing with the mouse folk when I wrote Briar, the sprite folk I'm playing in TechSoup's game.
Mm-hmm.
I was playing around with these different like small characters, and that sprite's actually I think a tiny character at this point, but playing around with different small characters and like the dynamics of that. And then I hit on the idea of a mouse folk Paul Bunyan.
Good lord.
Hence the hand axes. And I don't like to go straight full like I'm just playing a Paul Bunyan, but like that's the inspiration behind him. So
Okay.
he's this roving kind of prodigy for his age, a prodigy for his area. He's
Prodigy
not
in
the
what?
in the work, capital T, capital W. I think that's the only name they have for this stuff
Yeah.
is the work. Um,
So, what
he
would
maybe
be
hasn't.
what would be
Go
like
ahead.
a thing he's known for?
I think he has kind of an innate sense of where he needs to be before it's not before it happens to completely prevent it, but before it's too late. Like he's got this knack for being there just in the nick of time to keep it from getting really bad. Sometimes before anything happens, because that happens with everybody. But I think where he's really starting to gain some notoriety is being on the area of his border that crosses to somebody else's, and there's maybe a brush fire there, or I keep going back to that. Sorry, that's in my head right now. Or like a polluted river or something like that, or something that's a river that's about to be cut off or has been cut off, and so like the field downwind, the crops there are suffering or something like that.
Yeah. So some themes I'm
Downstream, not
hearing
downwind.
is
Yeah.
is brush fire, polluted
Hmm.
river, and what was that last one?
Oh, just the crops failing because the
Crops
river
failing.
was cut off, something like that. So those sorts of things.
Yeah. No, I keep
More of
hearing
like,
you. So
yeah,
I'm looking for something to sort of latch on and build
right.
out. I think one of the reasons you and I have such a we're having a little bit of trouble with this is we're really used to
Yeah.
building out characters together, and I made you build out this
Right.
character without telling me anything about it. So I think
Yeah.
that's part of it.
Yeah. I mean,
But
some of the things that would be away from directly the land would be like if there's a blight on, which is just a disease on like the local deer population or the local sparrow population, or the beetles in a particular area are getting out of control. Those sorts of things.
okay,
So it could be like the health of the fauna or population control of the fauna, things like that.
okay.
Just anything that's an imbalance is their goal, to keep things in balance.
Now, what would make Flax angry? Would it be somebody not doing their, like if he's on the border of an area,
Hmm.
would it be the other guy not doing his job?
Oh, certainly. And that's a general like cultural shame of,
Okay.
if you're not going to do the work, at least go back to town and let somebody else step in to do it for you. Like
Rude.
it's bad enough you're not doing it.
Oh, yeah,
Um,
yeah, okay.
but if you're not doing it and you're not saying anything,
Mm-hmm.
and so that whole region is suffering to the point where things that are at least in their foreseeable lifetimes irreparably damaged,
Mm-hmm.
um, then that's like I think the ultimate shame, um,
Okay.
for them culturally.
Now, or I had a thought and it ran away. Oh, what if pollution in the river was happening because somebody was being especially careless, maybe even negligent?
Yeah.
Would that cause Flax to be angry?
It would. So that would be a tricky situation. So say for example there was like a mine right
Mm-hmm.
near the river, and they were dumping all of the chaff and stuff, all of their waste, all of the stuff they're filtering out, just dumping it in the river and letting it go.
Mm-hmm.
Um, depending on where that is in the setting, like in the life cycle of the river,
Mm-hmm.
it might not make a big difference, or it might be a really big deal.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's going to be a trickier situation because that's not something he can go in and they can, relocate some of the fauna or, cull some of the beetles or whatever. That's a situation where there's other sentient creatures doing that, be it kobolds, humans, dwarves, elves, whatever.
So would that be something
Um,
he's particularly not good at?
I think he has a lot less experience with that. I think they all do in general.
So I think it might be more interesting to play with
Yeah.
something that he doesn't have a ton of experience with to see how he'd
Oh,
react,
definitely.
rather
Yeah.
than be like, and he saves the day with a
Right.
bushfire. Yeah, okay.
Yeah. No. And he's definitely, like I said earlier, he's not the folk hero yet.
Mm-hmm.
I think that comes years down the road. But I think that's where he's going.
Well, let's build something that would give him folk heroship status.
Mhm.
What about this? Let me toss out some ideas and let's see which road you want to walk down.
Okay.
One of them I'm thinking is when they hit their borders, right? There's a certain cadence, and so they're able to pass news that way because otherwise nobody can find them. So he's hanging
That's
out
a
at the
good
border
idea.
meeting spot. He
Yeah.
hears about the guy in the next border. Asks him if he's seen anything funny in the river, and Flax has. And the other guy says, "Well, I think I might know where that's coming from. I think there's a we'll say a gaggle of humans that are polluting the river with, and we'll go with mine. Let's say a mine." And the poor guy's like, "I'm really new at this. I don't really know what to do. Like, what do I do?" So he's calling on Flax for.
Yeah.
Okay.
So you'd partner together to take care of it.
Right. Do you like this idea? You want me to keep running with
Yeah,
it? I can
and
give
I
you
think
another
that
one.
makes sense.
Okay.
I think that definitely happens, especially if it's near the border. So he can still he's not too far away to abandon his own duties, but
I
it's
think
close
it's
enough he can cross over and help for a little bit.
well, the other way I think about these borders, right? Like if a river runs through multiple territories, it's kind of everybody's job in each of those territories to handle
for
it.
sure.
I think Flax has
Yeah.
picked up there's dead fish here or there, dead bird.
Yeah.
And one of the reasons he wanted to talk to this dude is
Yeah.
and we'll call him Bindle. No, that's too close to another name.
Can't do it.
What about
Chaff. I was thinking
how about Sond?
grain.
How about
Sond, sure.
Sond. Okay, his name is Sond.
Yeah.
So you've been looking to talk to Sond the next time that you had the meetup because the river starts in his area.
Mm-hmm.
And so he wanted to collect a little bit more information.
Does it start in his area, or does it start? Even if it does it wind into Flax's territory and then back into Sound's territory and then back over, so that he could
Sure.
see it's good here, but it's coming out when it's coming back from Sound's. There's something wrong.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Okay.
Yep. So there's a curve.
Yeah.
At that, so before the curve, it's fine. After the curve, when it comes out of Sond's area, it's bad. So it's got to be Sond's
There's
area.
something. Yeah.
Yeah. And is Flax super talkative, or is he super suave, or is he very sort of one word? Yep. Nope.
No, I
Where's he
think
live?
he's. I mean, he talks if he needs to talk. He's not particularly talkative or particularly quiet.
Is he the kind that sort of hunts down? He's like, Sond, I've got a thing, and I need you to tell me the thing, or is he like, hey Sond, what's up, and see what Sond says?
I've been watching a lot of Supernatural lately,
Uh-huh.
so I think he's somewhere halfway between Sam and Dean.
I have
he's
not
all
watched-
dewy-eyed. Okay,
I've
he's
not
not
watched
all
Supernatural.
dewy-eyed puppy oh well, you're having feelings. Let's talk. He's not that, but he's also not kick your door down, shoot you in the face, and then ask questions.
Okay, so that's what he's not like. What is he like?
Yeah, so he's somewhere in the middle where you're like, hey, so here's a problem. It looks okay up here. It's a problem down here. What do you have on your side? There's got to be something over there, but it's not aggressive. It's not aggressive. It's not accusatory. It's just here's the facts.
We need more facts. Yep.
Yeah, I think it's just a very straight shooter. Here's the facts. Clearly something's happening. What have you figured out?
I think Sond would probably be a little more hesitant to admit that something went wrong. And so I think Flax would have to sort of drag that out of him.
Yeah.
Would that irritate Flax, or would he be very, very patient? How patient is Flax?
I think he's as patient as he has time for. So if something's on fire, then he's not going to be patient. But if it's something where hey, this is not something we can immediately solve anyway, it's going to take some time to figure out, let's take our time, figure it out, and do it right instead of trying to take shortcuts and make it worse.
Okay. I don't think this
Um,
would have reached urgency yet. I think I'm trying to keep in mind
no, I
that
don't
he
think
gets
so.
there in the nick of time, so I don't think the river is
Yeah.
completely polluted yet. So let's say he has patience with Sand, and he slowly drags out the story from Sand that there is a group of humans that are mining. They're not doing it safely, and they're dumping all of their waste into the river. Dumping waste
Yeah.
into the river would be bad anyway. Even animals in the
Right.
forest know not to poop in the river. But
Right.
the humans are dumping everything there, even the
Right.
stuff that they pull up from the earth that they don't use. They
Right.
instead of leaving it there or finding a use for it, they waste it and dump it into the river, which is poisoning the water. And
Right.
Sand admits that he doesn't know what to do. Like he knows what to do if the deer are sick. He knows what to do if
Right.
the fish get weird or whatever, but he's not sure what to do when somebody is deliberately causing a problem. I don't think Flax has run up against this either, but Flax might be a season or two older than Sand. Does that sound
Yeah,
right?
I think he is. I think he's not. I mean, he's not middle aged, but he's not a freshman in college. He's
Mm-hmm.
maybe a year or two, like to equate it to like our modern human standards. He's a few years out of college.
Okay.
Um,
Whereas Sand
an
is like
experienced turns.
in college kind of thing.
Yeah, he would have like made it through his internship and have a real job at this point for a year or two, sort
Okay.
of thing.
All right. So Sand is basically like, please help me. I
Mm-hmm.
think probably Flax would think about well, let me ask you this. Would Flax be like, all right, let's go? Or would he say, all right, give me the morning to think about it?
I think he would say, let's take the morning to talk about what we know so far.
Okay. And I think Sand would be like, I just need to show you. So would Flax go with him or
Hmm.
try and drag some more information out of him? Because again,
I think he'd go with him, but
yeah.
try and like coach him into providing the information he does have.
Right, because Sand just doesn't even know what to tell him. And so,
Exactly.
yeah,
And so he'd
perfect.
try to like ask probing questions and like if San's like too anxious about like report soldier and he's too anxious,
Hmm.
Flax would be at least smart enough to be like, okay, cool, all right, well, don't tell me anything, let's get going. And then as they start walking, be like, oh, so hey, how have the deer been doing over here? And like asking the questions he'd try to be answering himself,
Clever. Okay.
to try and get San to answer them for him, so he doesn't have to go out and scout it to
Got
save
it.
time.
All right, so Sand is able to answer those questions. It's not that he's an idiot; he's just new, right? He's just young,
Yeah,
and he's inexperienced. I should say inexperienced instead of young because
mm-hmm.
those are two vastly different things.
Very
So
different
he's
things.
inexperienced, but he settles down as you're talking to him. So
Yep.
you get closer to the area and you're seeing the signs yourself. When a river
Mm-hmm.
is poisoned, it's not just the stuff in the water that suffers, it's everything around it.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
with him being sort of in tune to the forest around him, you actually feel a little sick as well. Can you roll me a constitution check?
Oh sure, dice are always my friend.
That's what makes the story interesting, my love.
That's not too bad. That's a 19.
That's not too bad, and you have a 19.
I didn't realize I had such a good con score. I don't usually play
Dork.
high con characters.
Okay, so you're because you were prepared for it, and because you're sort of in tune with this part of the woods, because the territories overlap to some degree, and this is one of those sort of overlappy places. You're able
Mm-hmm.
to separate what is the poison and what is not. And it definitely feels like a poison to you. Like whatever these humans have dug up should have stayed where it was.
Okay.
So let's fast forward in time. I'm trying to think of like what would be a good. Let's say Sand tells you what he knows, shows you the evidence, and you end by getting within sight of the human encampment, the mining, and you see, we'll say 15 humans. They seem to be
Okay.
driven. They seem to be shackled. So most of them, except for, we'll say 3, are they don't have any weapons, and they've got shackles on their legs to keep them from running. And the other three they look like ruffians with whips, and they're driving the 12 to 13 other dudes. They're all men. And the camp is really rough. It's sort of rotting tents and smoky fires, and the ruffians seem very uneasy in the woods anytime there's like a tree snap or like a branch snap or a hooting of an owl. They get real jumpy. And the workers are so exhausted at the end of every day, they just sort of fall over and sleep when nobody's bugging them. And the mine, the excuse for mine is really just a hole in the ground that they've sort of dug out. And actually the men have to go in there on their hands and knees to get in there. So you'd be able to walk in there upright, but it would still be a fairly close ceiling. So this is all stuff that you can pick up from observing, because these are very unwoodwise dudes. Like, it's not difficult for you to get pretty close to right up. They didn't clear any of the land around. This is a spot right, like, it's barely not visible from the tree line. Like, it's that close to the edge of the forest. And they didn't really chop down any trees or anything. This is a natural clearing, and so they're sort of burrowing and digging underneath the roots of the trees around them. And they're right up next to the river. So the fire is actually like maybe only 10 feet from the river. So even the ash and stuff from the fire is getting into the river. It's that close. And everything that the workers they bring up in like buckets and stuff, and they dump it in one spot, and you can see where they're dumping it because the earth is poisoned right there. And then there's two other guys that are there, and they're using water from the river to sluice through the stuff they're pulling up. And so all of the dirt and anything they don't keep is going straight into the river. And you see that they're pulling up what do you think, gold or a pale stone?
I think, yeah, it'd probably be something not as direct.
Maybe like a pale, like chips of a pale stone.
Yeah, something like that.
And I'll make up what the pale stone would be later.
Sure. Yeah, I like that better.
Okay.
Something that's maybe like really good for enchantment, or something that's really expensive that they're trying to keep secret, and before they can sell it, sort of thing.
I also think it's the kind of thing that you need quite a bit of it before it's worth anything. Like a chip or two is nothing.
Right.
But one of the reasons it's worth so much is it is such a pain to get it. You really have to disrupt the environment, and
it's costly. Like, if you inhale too much dust, then you have to haul a body out, sort of thing.
Well, one of the things I was thinking was, where you're mining it, in order for it to form, everything else that gets left around where it's formed is really detrimental to the environment. So usually what will happen is the way this stuff gets found is somehow it rises to the surface enough that it starts killing stuff, and people like Flax and Sand will come in and remove it. Not mine it, but like remove it, neutralize it. And I think there's probably a way to neutralize it that Flax isn't familiar with, because I don't think he's run into this yet. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe he's heard whispers about it, or like stories or stuff at most, if even that.
Yeah.
Like enough to know that there is something that can be done about it, but no clue what that would be.
Right. Okay.
Because it's just the two of them. Like, he's not gonna be able to go to like Grandpa and be like, "Oh, what's this stuff?" and have Grandpa give him any leads.
Yeah, no, I think it would be more myth. Have I done something with a stone recently? I feel like I did something else with a stone. Okay, well then, hopefully this won't be a repeat of anything. So what Flax sees is these men struggling up out of the earth, setting a bucket down. Another, we'll say it's two dudes, grab the bucket, take it over to this like really haphazardly set up wooden sluicing area, where they put the bucket of dirt at the top, and then they scoop up water and dump it in there. And as the water runs, it leaves behind these. Once in a while, it leaves behind like one or two little And they're tiny. They're like fingernail clipping tiny pieces of this very pale stone. And they have to hold it up to their eyes really closely to see if it's just a white rock or it's actually this stone. And how about we say that it's always oval shaped as well?
Okay.
Tiny, and it's a perfect oval, and that's one of the ways that they can tell. And it's concave, so it's almost like a
Contact, oblong contact.
I was going to say dragon scale, but sure, contact lens, absolutely.
Dragon scale works too.
It's not a deep concavity. It's just enough that like they can tell it's one of those. And every time they find one, they have to hold it up, and one of the dudes with the whips will come over and put it into a bag. And they actually find two while you're watching. Let's say you watch them for probably a day or so to collect information.
Yeah.
And the bag he puts it in is not very large. You could maybe put. Do you know what a buckeye seed is? Like a buckeye nut?
Nope.
How about a walnut?
Yeah.
You could probably fit 5 walnuts in it.
Okay.
And
with or without the hull?
With the hull, because we're talking about size. And this bag is not even a fifth full. Like there's barely anything in it.
Mm-hmm.
And Sand tells you that he thinks they've been there for about a month. And that tracks with the kind of the junk they're putting in the river. You can actually see that the curve of the river that they're in, they're actually building out an area where they're filling in the river enough that the water started to pool here instead of move smoothly through.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Like they would try and reroute it if they were there long enough.
I don't think they're trying to reroute it. I think they're very haphazardly sort of like dumping sediment there, and it's building up sort of a bar.
Yeah.
All right, so what else could I tell Flax? Well, what else would Flax want to know, do you think?
I mean, he's not completely devoid of interest of the humanoids, or I guess they're humans in this case.
Mm-hmm.
So he would try to observe, like, who are the people in charge, where did their workers come from, do they seem to be from like the same type of clans or opposing clans, or just like random people they grabbed on the road. Are they prisoners? Like, are these criminals that are being put to work as punishment, or are the people in charge criminals that have just like basically more or less kidnapped people, or are they punishing their own prisoners?
So, of the 3 with whips, there's one who's a little bit taller than the rest, and he's the one that's collecting the chips, the stone chips. He has a fancier whip. It's got it's got silver in the handle, and when he is directing the other 2 men to direct the workers, he makes references to my lord. My lord won't be happy if this is all we're bringing him. They got to work harder. Get in there and make them work. And what hampers the men is that they don't want to go into the hole. It's again a very shallow, and one of the guys references losing a 4th sort of dude that's in charge when one of the tunnels collapsed. And the guy in charge sneers at him and says, "What are you scared?" But you notice he doesn't ever go down that hole. And the workers are very nondescript. Like, even their clothing doesn't really tell you where they're from. They're all extremely thin, so whatever they've been doing, they've been in captivity for a very long time. And the men are not very good at feeding them. Like, there's a deer like spit on top of a smoky fire, and they cut off pieces of it to feed themselves. And there's a big cauldron of some watery type liquid that they chuck bits of the deer into, and every now and then one of the men goes out into the woods and then comes back with some nondescript root and tosses it in. And frankly, it's surprising they haven't poisoned themselves yet. Sand makes a comment about they dumped in a bunch of those awful berries, but that make you throw up your toenails. But They must have just boiled the dickens out of it because it just made them slightly queasy, or they've got stomachs of iron. So you know that they're being very, like, everything that Sand is telling you and everything you're seeing, they're very unwoodwise, and very nervous. And the guy that keeps referencing my lord will occasionally look around him like he's expecting something. Like if a dude showed up, between 1 second and the next, standing next to him, it wouldn't really shock him. Like he's waiting for like a raven to glide into the clearing and drop a note or something. Like he's not spooked. He looks like he's expecting some sort of message. Does that sound right?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. What do you think Flax would do at this point? Like, what's his plan? We can either fast forward to a week from now when he has a plan, or...
I think we can kind of gloss over the time they take to do all this and figure that out. But I think he'd be looking at if there's a way, like, what is the rhythm of their day? Is this something they keep going around the clock, or are there periods of like they work during the day and then they sleep at night, and all the workers come out of the mine at night, that sort of thing. Mm-hmm. And if that's the case, he'd be looking for a way to, are there some trees he could go to town on, because he's pretty good chopping down trees, believe it or not.
Is he?
Yeah. Is there a way he could fell a tree so it would fall right in front of this hole, since the hole is so small? Mm-hmm. To at least slow them down for a bit, so he could do something. What's an immediate solution, and then long term. Is this in the side of a hill, or is it just a hole straight down into the ground? Like, is there a way, if it's a hole straight down in the ground, is there a way he can flood it? Can he do something with the river to divert it so that it floods it? Or if it's on the side of a hill, can he cause a slide to collapse it? That sort of thing, to just cut them off to make it too much worth their trouble to stay. But he'd want to do that in a way where he wouldn't be spotted, or they wouldn't really notice him.
Right. So chopping down a tree would be difficult because they'd hear it, right? So you'd want to look for a tree that's already coming down anyway.
Yeah.
Like that would probably be Flax's preference. I'll say it is in the base of a small hill, and the reference they made to one of the tunnels collapsing, like maybe you can get something going where all of the tunnels collapse.
Yeah. And I think he'd be going. I don't know if he has. Well, he has some experience underground because they burrow. But I think collapsing the whole thing would be a lot. I don't know if he'd be able to pull off. I don't know if he thinks he could pull off collapsing everything with them around. So his first point of order is to get them to leave. If
you get a herded deer to stampede through there, that'd probably collapse the damn thing pretty well. So I think another component here is that he recognizes... Roll me a history check.
Okay. That's more like it.
Did you roll a 1?
No. But I have a +0, so 9.
He recognizes the stone. It's on a list of stuff they have to memorize about these woods, and it's known as Ritsum. So Ritsum, and it is it's incredibly valuable as it's an ingredient in strength potions. Or it can be. Like, strength potions can be made all kinds of different ways, but...
Right.
But it's also... The way it gets formed in the earth creates quite a bit of other poisonous materials. And so, while on the one hand it is valuable, on the other, whenever it's encountered, it needs to be neutralized. And so, this is a stone that you all need to be looking for in the rivers, because that's where it will show up, and that's when it's getting close enough to the surface that it needs to be neutralized.
So is the stone itself poisonous, or is the formation...
The formation is. So what will
So if you have
happen?
the stone by itself, it's fine.
But if you have the stone, yeah. So if
Yeah.
if you stole that pouch of stone chunks and walked away with it, you'd be fine. The thing is if you find
Right.
one of those stones in the river, right? Like let's say you've got a dark river,
Right. Yeah,
like
I
where
got that.
right, and you know that somewhere close by is the poisonous material that it was formed from, and so
Right.
that's when you go start looking for dead woodchucks and stuff.
Oh, interesting. So if there's a bunch of like hard metals, like they may form into this.
Hmm.
So like the poisonous materials is what it's formed out of.
Yeah,
So like a diamond made out of like heavy metals, sort of,
right,
or like an opal or something.
right.
Okay.
And so mining it is really difficult because you have to both determine the area it's coming from and then somehow get in there and get in amongst the poisonous material to dig out these little tiny pieces of the stone. And often you only get maybe a handful of these stones for like a quarter of a mile worth of this poisonous material. Like
Mm-hmm.
it's extremely rare and it's just not worth it. And so with a 9, I'll say it's on a list of things y'all need to keep a lookout for. But in your lifetime and in your father's lifetime, a patch of this had never been found. We'll
Okay.
say it's that rare. And if you can get to it quick enough and you can neutralize it, then it
Mm-hmm.
spreads. It doesn't spread. And it takes a long time to spread, so it's one of those like urgent but not urgent type of
Right.
things. It's not forest fire level or avalanche level, but it's like a beaver blocking a dam level.
Right.
Like it'll block the water over time, so you need to make it stop, but at the same time, you can let it go for a week or two. It's one of those.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
We'll say with a 9 in history, we'll say he doesn't remember how to neutralize it. And so
Does he remember that it can be neutralized?
he remembers it can be neutralized, but he doesn't remember
Okay.
how to neutralize it. So, and he knows about the it's urgent but not urgent thing. So I think your original idea of he needs to get the people to go away and leave this alone will do for now, right? He needs to figure out a way to make them
Right.
stop digging it up and literally dumping it into the river. Like they're making
Right.
it worse by doing that. If you left it alone with the hole in the ground, you'd still need to figure out how to neutralize it. But if they're
Right.
actively taking it out and dumping it into the river, like it's gonna start affecting the larger populations soon.
Right.
How does that sound?
That sounds great.
Okay, so what we're looking at here is Flax needs to come up with a way to get the humans to go away. So I think he'd
Mm-hmm.
probably need to collect more information. Do you think he would send Sond away to get help?
I don't think it's reached that point yet. I think he would try to do something with the two of them first because
Mm-hmm.
they're both there,
Fair enough.
and it'd be more efficient to do it that way
Yep.
rather than, if Sand leaves and it's just Flax by himself,
Yeah,
things
that's
could take a
risky.
turn where he needs two people, or he's by himself encountering if they find him, for example,
That's fair.
right? He'd have no one to help him out.
Yeah, that's totally fair. Okay. Um, would now be a good time to take a break and we'll come back with some
Sure.
ideas? Okay.
Yeah, we can do
So,
that.
Stream, we're going to come back 30 minutes after the start of the hour. So 10 minutes
So
from
10
now.
minutes. Okay.
Yep. And we will be back with some fun ideas on how Flax is going to stop these idiots from mining in his territory. So, see if I don't have the right screen up, so give me just a second. There we go. All right, so Stream will be back in 10 minutes. Bye for 10 minutes, Stream. Hello, Stream. We're back, and I'm unmuted. Ugh, Jesus, I've got to get better at that. My apologies. All right, we're back, and we've got ideas, and we're gonna use them, and it's gonna be great. Is everybody ready for this? Here we go. How about you, Flax? You ready?
Oh, yes, me. I'm ready.
Yes, you, player, human.
Yep.
Yes, mouse folk, dude, thing. Okay,
I was like, who's Flax in chat?
it's you.
Yeah, that's me.
You, dude. Tyler's always ready, so we don't have to ask if he's ready.
Yeah.
Or sorry, if they are ready. Okay, Flax. I think Flax needs to make a plan, and I think for Flax to make a plan, from what I know of Flax, he needs to gather some more information. Does that sound right?
I think so, yeah.
So what I'd like to do is dump you into kind of a skill challenge.
Okay.
Where you'd only use your the skills you're proficient in, which on the sheet
Yeah.
have little dots next to them. Skill challenges, the way I use skill challenges is usually to get players to think outside of the box a little bit more, and I think this would be a fun exercise. What do you think?
Okay. Yeah, you can do that.
So the skills you're proficient in are acrobatics, animal handling, intimidation, perception, and survival. Technically, in a skill challenge, you could only use each of those once, but we also bounce back and forth between players. So we're going to kind of ignore that rule, but I do want you to try and think outside the box.
Yeah.
So it is, we'll say, midday. All of the workers are down in the hole. What is Flax doing, and which skill is he using to do it?
Let's see here. So down in the hole, are they like is there like a rhythm of them coming out and like dumping their bucket and going back in?
It's not a regular rhythm.
But okay, but that is happening. It's not
Yes.
like everything waits till noon and then everyone
Nope.
comes out.
Nope.
Okay. And what are the three people in charge? What are they up to? Like, are they just sitting in one spot until somebody comes out? Are they walking walking routes?
One of them is not here. You think you heard him say something about going hunting. The other two are sitting and playing dice.
I think if one of them was going to go off hunting, he would try and track that guy.
Okay.
Like, if he can keep an eye on him as he's leaving the camp, and kind of keep an eye on him as he's going.
How far would
See
you
if he
follow
can-
him?
I mean, I feel like they can find their way back to this mine, no problem. So I think he would shadow him, to see if there's an opportunity to either isolate him or manipulate him in some way to, spook him, something like that.
Okay. All right. Sorry, I expected you to try to get the lay of the land a little bit more, so I'm reorganizing my thoughts.
Sorry.
That's just based on what you said earlier about sort of blocking the hole or whatever. So I'm just thinking now.
Well, I think that he's following him to see if there's some way he can use this guy to make that happen.
To block the hole.
So if he can do, it might be like if he can convince him to like pick the routes that really will give them the runs.
Uh-huh.
And if the boss, I'm assuming the people in charge eat the lion's share of the food.
Yep.
If he can get them to all have, stomach troubles that they have to run off and they're tied up, that would free up the camp for him to go in there and do something.
Okay, so you're less following him to see what he does and more keeping an eye on the route he's taking to see if you can steer him in the direction of foodstuffs that will slightly
Right.
poison everybody.
Yeah.
Okay, which skill are you using for this?
I think I would try and use survival to identify some plants or roots that he could set up as like a little like treasure trove of food.
Got it. Okay.
First,
Yeah.
and then later try and herd him in that direction to just happen to notice it.
Yeah, because I don't think you're going to have any trouble finding this dude. And they're so
Yeah.
skittish, I think you're going to be able to drive him pretty
Yeah.
easily. Okay, so go ahead and roll me a d20 and add your survival bonus.
Rolling 9s. So that's a 12.
So one of the things I do is I take into account the fact that you are proficient in this. So if you rolled survival and you weren't proficient in it and you had a 12, I'd say something different, right? But what I'm going to say is you got over a 10. So the berries that Sand mentioned, you asked Sand where
Yeah.
those are. Actually, I'll give you advantage on this because Sand's going to help you. So go ahead and roll again.
Oh, okay. Well, that's much better. That's a 23.
Great. So Sand tells you where the berries were, and he tells you that they do actually forage in that area quite a bit, so that works really well for you. And Sand says, I've actually been really worried about them foraging in that area because there's a bunch of kiproot over there. And kiproot is is the root of a flower that flowers very early on in the year, and then in the late summer and fall, which is what we're looking at here, turns into a root that looks almost exactly like a potato, and it's got the same sort of consistency as a potato, not like a potato, but like a long wiggly
Right.
potato.
Yeah.
And
Tuber.
it's some sort of tuber, and at the point that they're tubery, the flowers are all gone. They're just tubers in the ground. They're fairly easy to dig up because the ground that these flowers grow in is fairly loose. And they're plentiful. And there's a whole batch of them underneath these low bushes that these guys have been rooting around, and he's really worried they're going to find those because those things make you super sick.
Perfect.
Stuff comes out of all the ends. It's not good at all.
Yeah.
So this is perfect for you. You're like, that's exactly what I want. And so I'll have you both follow him for a while, and he's heading in that exact. Well, let's find out. Yeah, he's heading in that exact direction.
Can we get ahead of him?
You can, yeah. So
Yeah. So if we know where it's at, he'd try to get ahead of him.
yeah, that sounds right.
And then see if he can either thin out the ground on top of it, or thin out the bushes. Like he might pull some of the bushes back so it's easier to get to make it easier to spot.
Yeah,
In
it's
a
sort
way
of
that looked like, yeah, make it look like a deer came through and ate all the berries, and it's like, oh no, the berries are gone.
Perfect.
So strip those away.
Yep.
And then like open up where the tubers are, and maybe even kind of like pull one out a little bit.
Like the deer was.
like it
Yep.
was like started to pull on it and was like, I don't want that, so it's exposed a bit.
Yeah.
So you see it.
Perfect. Okay, so we'll have you do all that. Your 23 is doing really well right now. And then you wait.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe you send Sand back to make sure the guy keeps coming.
Yeah, I'd say I would definitely do that. I'd send Son back to like make sure he keeps moving this direction and doesn't get distracted. And
So
I think part of their interaction and their training, when they're getting trained for the work, is learning to make like animal whistles and things like that because they're not supposed to be seen or heard.
Well, and you
know.
can speak to small creatures, and I would imagine that you
Yeah,
can
that's
imitate
true
the
too.
noises
Yeah.
of a lot of larger
Right.
creatures. And so I think it would not be outside of the realm of possibility that Sand is able to make like growling noises and stuff.
Yeah. Or even have like the animals clear out so that, like a deer doesn't pass him by, and so he doesn't go chasing the deer.
Right. Yep.
That sort of thing.
Yep.
Okay.
So Sand slips in next to you. Are y'all tree climbers? Or are you more ground dwellers?
I mean, mostly ground dwellers, but we can climb trees. Like, it's not a problem.
No, that's fine. Okay, so he slips in. You're under another very prickly bush that doesn't really bother you all, but because you've got the coats and stuff. But these guys would avoid because they're dorks, and you're actually munching on some very nice berries that don't make anybody sick, but they look weird.
Probably
They're a
something
weird
dried out
color.
of a pack or something.
Yeah, no, they're fresh. I specifically want
I
this
see.
to be a
Yeah.
berry that the idiots avoid because they look poisonous, but they eat the ones that
Right.
don't look poisonous because they're idiots.
Right.
Yeah. So you're sitting there. The guy stumbles in, and it got stung by something, so he's like batting it. Like, I hate this forest. He's got what looks like a rough sack that's got holes in it that somebody tried to like staple shut somehow. Like very rough repair. And he looks at the bushes in dismay. He's like, "Damn it! And you can hear him talking to himself. Like he's like, I had to come out here and it's all the way out here, and he's scratching his neck. He's so stupid, and he kicks his foot and he kicks the root that you exposed. And he's like, well, what? Oh, hang on, what is this? And so he hunkers down, and he digs around in it, and he pulls, and he tugs on it, and it pulls right up, and he's like, huh, potatoes, great. And he chucks it in the bag, and he starts digging around. He fills that bag to overflowing. And so he's like got it in his arms, like,
Yeah, because potatoes keep. Why not? Yeah.
Exactly. And he clears that whole area. So you start to follow him back and you leave Sond there to dig up any of the rest of them because now that they're
Hmm.
exposed, other animals will find them and then the
Yeah, we don't
animals
want
will
the
get
animals to eat
sick.
them. Yeah.
So you're gonna, and you tell him to cache them somewhere in case you need more.
Right.
Sorry, I just said, I apologize. I just made a decision for you.
No, that's a great idea. I love it.
Yeah, okay. I got lucky then. I'm very sorry. I try not
Yeah,
to do that
that's
for
okay.
people. All right. So Sond catches up to you.
Hmm.
This guy's still heading back to the camp. Y'all are making sure that he doesn't get distracted by deer or anything. He makes
Yep.
it all the way back to the camp. He triumphantly declares his find, and he starts just chucking them straight into the pot. He's cutting them up very roughly with his dagger, which makes it worse.
Good.
If you eat them raw, it's not as bad, but if you cook them, it gets worse. So
Yeah.
you cut them up, and he chucks them straight in there, and he empties like, I'll say a good half of the bag straight in there.
Cool.
And he's like, yeah, I found some potatoes. Look, it's getting all. So potato usually makes water sort of like thickens it up, sort of brothy.
Hmm.
These
Yeah.
do kind of the same thing. The color is slightly off, but they don't notice because they're dorks. What do you do next?
So the workers that have been in camp here, have we while we've been watching, have we been able to figure out like are they like other brigands that are being punished, so they're part of the same clan sort of thing, or are they like completely enemies that if you were to set them free, they'd be your ally? Like, what's the read on these guys?
The read you would get is if you would set them free, they would just sit where you let them free. Like they
Okay,
are emotionless and colorless. Like they have
got
been
it.
trodden on for so long that they're not even like they would need a lot of healing and a lot of coaxing to be individuals
Okay,
again. They're more this like shapeless horde,
okay,
shambling. I mean, they're not dead or anything. They're not undead or anything, but they're not particularly alive either, if you know what I mean.
okay. Um, okay. I think I would. So what's their dinner looking like? Are they getting ready to eat? And like when we've seen them eat before, did like they eat their fill and then leave whatever's left for, um, whatever's left for the workers to eat? Or
Yeah, so around noon, like lunch-ish time, all of the
mm,
workers start to file out of the hole, and they all take their individual buckets over to the sluicing area, and they're all looking over their shoulders at the pot. And that's when the
mm,
men are like, oh, okay, lunchtime. And so they start hacking off pieces of the deer, and the deer is like half
mm,
cooked. I cannot believe that, like,
yeah,
Sond is like, ew.
yeah, yeah,
And they're hacking off the more cooked bits and sort of lazily rotate it. And then they go over to and chuck it in the bowl, and then they go over to the stew pot and they pull up stuff
mm,
from there. And then when they're done, they go sit over by a small cask of ale, and they're getting cups out of that.
okay,
Once they're done, the workers very quickly are sort of like there's as the third one is getting his share, the workers are sort of like more looking over their shoulder than they are looking at the dirt, and be
yeah.
like, "Oh, I'm done." And then they shuffle over there, and they've all got bowls, and they're
So
tiny little
can
bowls.
yeah. So for today's meal, I think knowing that, what would end up happening is they would try between Sand and Flax, they'd try and round up like a flock of some type of birds in the area. Like
Hmm.
it's like talking to the animals and trying to convince them like, hey, there's gonna be some really great stuff here. Why don't you come hang out and we'll tell you where to go. So the intention there is once the guys in charge have eaten their fill
Hmm.
to send a group of animals through camp,
Hmm.
not to stay, nothing worth like them chasing down to eat or anything like that. Could be bugs, whatever. To like interrupt that food exchange so that like the workers aren't going to eat all of this stuff. Um,
Well, I'm not quite sure what that would look like. Right? If it's a flock of birds, like
yeah,
they're either gonna have to, like the workers aren't gonna respond. Like you thinking like something that'll knock over the pot?
Yeah, basically. I mean, it could be. We keep saying deer, so I was trying to steer away from deer, but like, yeah, like a few deer like running through and like kick the kettle over would
Mm-hmm.
work. Um, something like that. Something and nothing like super threatening. So like something like middle of the road. So I guess yeah, deer would work. Um, where they'd run through, knock the kettle over would be the goal,
Okay.
so that the bossmen still have their food to eat, which is full of um, laxatives,
Mm-hmm.
but it's not going to get to the workers.
You're trying to protect the workers.
Yeah, because if they're that weak and they're already that have a great time,
It
water's
might
not
kill
great where
them.
they are anyway. It
Yeah.
would probably kill all of them.
Yeah, I'd be rolling
Um,
some con checks for that, yeah.
yeah.
Okay. So you can speak with small animals, but not necessarily
hmm
deer. So how are you going to get them to do this?
It's a good question. Um, I think,
You'll be using, well, you've got animal handling as a skill.
yeah.
So use that. Roll me an animal handling check, and we'll
Okay.
see what that looks like.
That is an 11.
Okay, so instead of like getting their agreement on this, I think you're basically
Right.
gonna find a herd of deer and herd them in that area and hope they
Yeah.
chaos.
Just kind of point them at it and yeah.
Well, so you do manage to herd the deer through. They do not manage to kick over the cauldron.
Gotcha.
So, hang on, let me think about this. Would it be better story wise if they do kick over the cauldron?
I mean, it can always go up for a second attempt with something. Um,
Well, I see. Well, tell me this: is your goal to protect the workers secondary to knocking the hole in the ground, or blocking the hole in the ground, or primary?
I think yeah, I think it is secondary. The first, because if you do the math, like the whole is going to harm more people than this group,
Okay,
right?
so,
And long
so
term.
his reaction to the deer running through and not knocking over, would that cause him to be like, okay, well now I have to try something else, or would he move on to continue to block the hole?
Um, I think he would just kind of cross his fingers and move on to blocking the hole.
Okay, so I think that
Um,
we'll say you do manage to herd a spook a flock of deer in the right direction. They do run
hmm
through the camp, but they tend to jump over everything. And
yeah.
one of them does knock into the cauldron and it sloshes.
hmm
But one of the workers runs up, even though there are deer, and like grabs it and makes sure it doesn't fall over.
Got it.
Um, yeah, what do you do next?
So I think, how do I know how long this is going to take to start affecting the boss?
It'll take a couple hours. So you have some
Couple
time to
hours.
set up
Okay.
your next thing.
Okay. Um. Yeah, I think even if I was able to convince some starlings to like poop in it, I don't think that would really keep them from serving it to the workers, unfortunately. So
No, you've already said
I
that you're
don't.
going to move on to the
Yeah.
hole, so
So I think
you can think
he's
about
gonna
that in the
start
back of your
sitting.
mind, but
Yeah.
yeah.
Um.
Would it make sense for him
So
to scout the area so he can...
well,
Sorry,
that's what I was just gonna ask.
I
Is
interrupted. My apologies. Go ahead.
yeah, I was just gonna ask is, we were looking at the trees and stuff. Is what would be my best bet on blocking the hole?
Well, go ahead and roll me a perception check. We'll see
Okay.
what we got there.
Oh, come on. An 11.
I'm going to give you advantage on it because Sand is going to be helping you. He knows this area a little
Oh,
bit better
okay.
than you.
Okay. Still an 11.
What'd you roll the second time?
A 1.
Wow.
The first one of the whole time, so I'm doing pretty well.
Sand rolls better than you.
Great.
Sand points out that there's that the small hill that they're in seems to be studded with a bunch of larger, like person-sized rocks, which would block the
Perfect.
hole rather nicely.
Yeah.
And the ground in this part of the forest is not sandy; it's more loamy. So once you get something in the dirt, it doesn't tend to move very easily, which isn't great for
Yeah.
you knocking a rock loose.
Right.
But if you were to hit it with something very heavy, like a tree, then it would probably
Yeah.
collapse. And even if the tree rolls away, that might be useful.
Right.
Now, roll me another perception check. That's kind of the plan, and you're all going to be both of you are going to be looking for a good tree to try and knock in that direction.
That is a nat 20.
Yes. Okay.
So looking for like a tree like at the top of the hill to start that avalanche. Is that what you're saying?
Either to do that or like to actually come from across the clearing and land on that hole on the rock that knocks it down.
Oh, I see.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, yeah.
While you're looking for this tree, actually, you stumble across a chunk of amber. It is. Also, tell me if this sounds right. You're actually probing at the base of some of the trees to see if any are ready to come down, because there's actually quite a few older trees. And as you're
Especially
doing
if
that,
the area's poisoned, like might as well call the ones that are already dead.
there you go.
Sort
Okay.
of thing. Yeah.
Internet, I do not actually know where amber comes from, so I am making this up. But let's say that's you dig up a chunk of amber right around there, and you're looking at it. What was that? I thought you said something. No.
Oh no.
You're looking at it, and for you, it's about palm sized, and it's very rough. It's a unhandled chunk of amber, but you can see something inside of it. Roll me a. How is your nature a +0?
I'm not proficient in it, and I'm not real intelligent.
Roll me a history check with advantage,
Okay.
because I want you to roll well.
History's the same bonus.
I know, just roll well for
nothing.
me, please.
Okay. Well, that's a 4,
That's not well.
and that's also a 4.
You're fired. There is something in the center of this amber, and you're not quite sure what it is. But when you pick it up, you get sort of a. Okay, when you're doing the work, every now and then you run across something that just sort of feels very in tune to you. Maybe it's a tree that's in just the right spot between earth, wind, and sky and water. Maybe it's a cave that is perfectly set up. I don't know, right? Like, this is another one of those things.
Like a place of power, sort of.
Less a place of power and more
On
a place
the
of
light side.
more a place of rightness. Like everything is in balance here. This is a mobile version of that. It feels sort of very in balance. Would you tuck that in your pocket?
I think it would actually give him pause. I think he would. Well, he already has pause, but it would make
You're
him.
fired. Get out. I told you not to do puns. You're fired.
I didn't. I could have written a bard. You
Stream
wouldn't have
over.
any heads up. I
You're
brought
ruined.
Marius back.
Ah.
Yeah, I don't think he would have. I think he would kind of take a moment and really try and examine it, and he'd ask Sand if he'd seen anything like this in the area. And internet, I could be wrong. I think amber comes from its fossilized like tree sap.
Great, then it totally comes from a tree.
Well, and it would make sense to find it like in the roots near this forest and stuff like
Great,
that. Great,
I totally said a thing right.
So he would kind of like talk to Sand and see if he'd seen any other amber in the area, because that's valuable in its own right, not as rare as this other stuff, but it'd be something he would notice at least.
Roll me an investigation check.
Okay. That thing that I'm.
Also not great at.
Well, that's a 19.
Great, thank you, Jesus. So you and Sand are looking at this, and Sand tells you, I've seen chunks of amber, but that one's got something in it. There's, Trina back in town, she really likes these if it's got like bugs and stuff in it, because she's a history buff and all that. So you could take that back to her, but you're looking at it and you realize it doesn't have a bug or like a creature trapped in it. What it has trapped in it perfectly is what looks like a seed. And it is unlike any seed you've ever seen before. And you ask Sond if he's seen that before.
Yeah, I definitely asked him if the seed itself looks familiar.
He rolled a 19. And he says, that looks something like... Well, that looks something... how would he put this? I think what he would relate to you is... So Trainee is a girl he likes. Her grandmothers, all the way up, her mom, her grandma, they keep track of like ancient world stuff. So like fossils and things like that, they are fascinated with and they know all about them. He has seen a picture that looks something like that seed, and it was for a tree that doesn't exist anymore. But it was a tree that was, the way that the trees in this forest are part of an ecosystem. Mm-hmm. This tree, he recalls, because he's more of a tree buff, he recalls that this tree was its own ecosystem. It was such a large tree that things grew on its branches that were not the tree, but would only grow on the tree. There were even small ponds and stuff because of the way the branches would lay out and things like that. The way that it would mold the earth around it. It was almost its own little plateau.
Got it.
And that they find evidence of these things every now and then. But so Trainee would love this, and he sort of is like, could I? You definitely have to show it to her the next time you're back in town.
Like trying to get it from me for a betrothal piece or something.
No, less of that. Like
Okay.
I think the way that these folk work is if you find it, it's yours, even if it's in his territory, kind of thing.
Oh,
And
sure.
if you offered it to him, he'd be thrilled, but it's just,
Right.
he's more like, oh, you found something really cool. You have to show Trainee when you get back to town. She would love this.
Got it.
Less of a give it to her and more of a, you gotta let her see it. You gotta let her sketch it.
Right. Okay.
So there's that.
Cool. So I think you said it's about palm sized?
For him.
I think he's probably got a couple of pockets, like right inside, like if his shirt comes down and is cleft over the sternum, he's probably got a couple of pockets like over the collarbones on either side.
Sure.
Like, so if he's on his hands and knees, they're easy to get to, that sort of thing. So
Sure.
you would tuck it into one of those, so it'd sit like kind of right against his chest on his collarbone. So if he's right-handed, to the left, I guess.
Okay. Cool. You and Sond keep looking, and together you find a tree. And that's based on your old perception check. You find a tree that it is real ready to come down. Now, it's also it's not quite in the right direction. So what you'd need to, because it's in the base of another hill, and the way that it would try to fall is out of the hill. So you and Sond actually work to clear out underneath the hill enough room that you can chop the taproot from that direction. And then while you're chopping chopping the root, Sond is going to go up to the top of the hill and try and dig out around the base of the tree so that when it tries to topple, it won't just be held up by the hill and it'll topple.
That tracks. I think they definitely burrow. Naturally.
Yeah, between
as mouse folk.
Yeah. Between the two of you, you get a nice area all cleared out. You wouldn't want to live here or anything. You're definitely going to need to run when you break it.
Right. And I think that Flax definitely keeps good care of his axes. Like, they're very much particularly special to him. Like, his regular go-to tool, because you can hammer on the back, you can chop on the front, you can pry with the handle, all kinds of things. They're very versatile. So I think they might even be sharp enough, depending on the state of this tree and what type of hardwood or softwood it is. He might even be able to, like, shave or carve, like, whittle out a chunk along the trunk, so it's not loud.
I was gonna say
that started.
I was gonna say the hill would block a lot of that noise, but you know what? That sounds even better. Yeah. So his, and we'll say we'll say that the tree is actually it's so ready to come down. The taproot is actually cracked. It's cracked in the wrong direction. So instead of hitting at it, you actually do want to whittle it down on the other side so that it'll break in that direction. Does that sound all right?
Yeah. That sounds great.
Okay, so you guys are going to work on this for a while. Now, when you do this, it will, if it does what you want it to do, it will cave in that the tree should actually land right, like the top half of the tree should break on the hill you're trying to block the hole in. And with any luck at all, it'll knock that, it'll hammer that rock down right over that hole. And the hill is rocky enough that that was really the only place they could have gone in at. So the thing is all of the workers inhale their food, and then whoever finishes their meal first from the three in charge dudes starts aiming kicks and whips at them to get them back into the hole. And with the time you're going to spend looking for the tree, digging out the burrow, whittling at the taproot, blah, 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 they're already going to be back in that hole. So what are you doing?
I think that's okay, though. I think what he's going to do is like, okay, this part's ready to go. Now that they're back in there, he's probably going to be shooting for doing this at night. So they're not really prepared to respond to it, and they can't really see much to do anything about it. Especially being humans without dark vision, it'll be even more difficult. So it'll be that much more disheartening.
Perfect.
That much more.
They might just be freaked out by the noises.
Yeah, like that to begin with.
And then the destruction.
The destruction. Then they're like, well, it was already hard enough to do this. Maybe we'll just take what we have and leave.
Maybe they'll flee. Yeah.
Maybe they'll just be done with it. Depending on what else I can throw at them at the time. So I think in the meantime, what he might do is how visible would he be if he was on this hill above the hole to the camp? Like, could he go up and kind of like burrow and like dig like a trough to try and guide the rock towards the opening to make it much more likely?
No, you'd be super visible. It's not even a hill. It's like a low hummock kind of thing.
Okay, got it.
So you'd be very visible. Mister, I have a disadvantage on stealth.
What are you talking about? I can take my chainmail off.
Your disadvantage on stealth is what I'm talking about?
Yeah.
But it's not even a stealth thing. Like, you'd be completely visible.
Yeah. That's what I was wondering. Okay. Yeah, because if it was, then he would just take his chainmail off and be a little sneakier.
No, you'd be right. I mean, there are no hills on it. It's part of the clearing.
Okay, it's part of the clearing. That makes sense then. Then I think he's just gonna kind of wait for the next mealtime. I don't know if there's much else that he would see to do.
Fair enough.
He's kind of gonna tuck in for this plan.
Yeah. So you can
until if they start reacting to that route.
Right.
If that's sooner.
Right. Let me roll some Constitution checks.
Sure.
I rolled a 7.
Does that mean you have to pull a card?
Well, I haven't done that for
Go for it. Do it.
You want? All right. Let me
Yeah. It's a failed saving throw, and you rolled a 7, so I feel like it's a bad thing that happens to them. And if it goes poorly for me, then I'll just blame Jim Hammer.
That's true. Yeah, that sounds like a great idea. Blame the people who made this.
It's his fault.
Okay. Some of these don't quite work. I don't think this is going to work for this situation. I think these work better for...
That's okay.
Yeah.
Somebody with a party?
Yeah, I think this is more of a party thing.
That's right.
They're just too goofy and too chaotic, you know?
Mm-hmm.
I do have a deck of blunders somewhere. Maybe I should grab that. Use them.
Oh, that's what I thought you were pulling from.
No, I'm pulling from the deck of wonder. And, like, there are cards like your enemy gets to draw a card from the deck, or you turn to stone for 6 hours. Like, those are not good things for the party.
Yeah.
They're not quite blunders, you know? Okay, so... All right, so one of the guards is down. He scrabbles off into the woods, and you can hear him very noisily being sick and being like, I'm gonna die. The other two are like... what was in that? And they are extremely uncomfortable. The two dudes that, Yeah, the two dudes that are usually sluicing the rock, um, before the guard goes off and has a bad time, they both kind of keel over, like one at a time. Like one of them is just sort of clutches his stomach
Good.
and sort of keels over, and like he's alive, but he's like he's sort of throwing up while laying down. He can't really do anything about it.
Yeah.
And the other guy sort of like checks on him, but then also starts to feel bad, and he keels over as well. One of the guys comes up from underground, and he goes over and throws up. But he like wipes his mouth, and he's like looking around like, what's going on? Another dude comes up with a full pail and dumps it. Does not seem to be phased at all. Another guy comes up who doesn't look too bad, and he's hauling one of the other dudes who's really lethargic and isn't really moving around a lot. That happens a couple more times. Like there's two or three of the, I'll say there's 4 total of the 10 that went underground that seem completely unfazed. And then the other 6, one of them is unconscious. Another one is close to unconscious, and the other 4 are really lethargic and are throwing up and other stuff. It's a mess. It's not fun. And the guard captain is like very uncomfortable, and he goes off and throws up, but he comes back like very suspiciously, like with a whip, and he's yelling at the dude that's in the forest and having a bad time, being like, "What did you put in there? Like, are you an idiot?"
So I would want to go after that guy that went off into the forest.
Mm-hmm.
And if I can literally catch him with his pants down,
Yep.
climb up in a tree, not directly above him, but like up somewhere near him.
Uh-huh.
And like when he's at his most occupied, strenuous moment, my intention is to yell at him as if I'm the spirit of the forest.
Oh, you're gonna try and intimidate him? Or scare him?
Yep.
Interesting.
I think what I try to do is like work in some of the animal speech and I can't use the gestures, but like any of the animal noises and communication I would like woven in through my talking, to make it, less civilized or not sentient, but like more raw nature creature as opposed to like a domesticated sort of creature.
What do you say is the spirit of the forest?
I don't think I would say anything about it being the spirit of the forest. I think it would more just be.
What would? Yeah, I understand that. Like, what are you gonna say to scare him off?
Oh, say as. Okay. I thought you said say is.
Mm-mm.
I would say something along the lines of, "You are destroying my land. What are you doing to me? You need to stop and leave immediately, or I will destroy you and everyone you know."
Roll me an intimidation check.
That is a 21.
Okay, Sand rolled really high as well, so he's gonna help you. So you guys get up in a tree, and actually, this tree has sort of a hollow limb, so you can kind of combine it with some other sort of like whittled things that make other animal noises. And if Sand is blowing into like 2 or 3 of them, and you're sort of like using a gruff voice into it, it echoes really weirdly.
Yep, exactly.
You scare the shit out of him, and he starts scrambling away. Like, just away. And he's just screaming very weakly. He's throwing up and screaming and other stuff, and he's just trying to get away from. So it takes him a while because he's weak, but he gets far enough away that you can't see him anymore. You can still kind of hear his screaming and crying and stuff, but he's not going to come back
towards
anytime
camp,
soon.
or just...
No, just away.
Okay.
Yeah, you scared the bejesus out of him. 1 down.
Great. And he'll probably chuckle and like fist bump Sand and head back to the camp and see what he can kind of see what's catching up over there.
The one who's super in charge is definitely like got his head between his legs, and he's been throwing up. Looks like he's throwing up everything he can throw up. The other one is now off in the woods, but not very far. He didn't make it very far, and he's throwing up sort of behind a tree. The 2 workers that were unconscious are still unconscious, and the 4 that are lethargic, 2 more are unconscious. And the 4.
Where's the guy? They all have whips?
All 3 of them had whips, yeah.
Okay. And the guy with the fancy whip.
He's got
Is he
his
the
head
one
down.
is he in camp or in the forest?
He's in camp. He's got his head down. He flicks his head up every now and then to check on the workers, and he puts his head
Okay.
back down. He's trying to yell at the dude that ran away. He doesn't know he ran away. He's just like, "What's you screaming about?" Just
Yeah.
yeah.
Is there enough cover in the camp that I could? Oh, jeez. I want to try and sneak in there and steal his whip and make it back out.
Why?
Like,
What is your
well, I
obsession
mean,
with whips?
no, it has nothing to do with that. Um, if like he's the leader and like that's his symbol of power, if I can remove his symbol of power, like the representation of him being in charge,
We'll make him more.
that will mess him with him even more. Now to do that, I'd have to take my chainmail off, and I think it takes
You super
to don
would.
and doff armor. I think it takes like 10 minutes.
Yep.
So
Well, he's
I
not
think
gonna
I would.
feel better anytime soon, so you'd have time. For
Yeah,
that.
I think I would. Once scaring the first guy off and seeing that he's doubled over, I would immediately start doing that. And I think if somebody helps me, you can cut that in half.
Sounds great.
So it's 5 minutes. I'd have.
Yeah, you tell Son what you're doing, and you
Yeah.
get that whipped off. That's great.
Yeah, and then I'm gonna try and I'm gonna sneak up and see if I can steal his whip while he's retching.
Roll me a stealth check, and I
Okay.
will give you advantage on it. If you've taken off your chainmail, you don't have disadvantage anymore.
Correct.
I will give you advantage
Yeah, I've done that.
because he feels wretched, and everybody else feels wretched, and
Right,
so
everybody's
he's very
busy.
distracted. Yeah.
Well, the first roll's a 19.
Okay. See if you can do better.
Nope, the second roll's a 7.
No.
I saw your calculations. Yeah, so that's a
Um,
total of a dirty 20.
Dirty 20. Okay, yeah. You're
Yeah.
going to be able to do this. I think what helps you here is you can sneak all the way around through the woods till you're like right behind him,
Yeah.
and then you like
Exactly.
get up there,
Yeah.
and it's hung on a hook. It's not
Yeah.
like clipped to his belt. It needs to be easy to like get up and off.
Yeah.
And so you're able to you time it to where he's doing one of his throwing up episodes, and you come up behind him, you get it right off, and you melt back into the forest.
Yep.
Neat as you please. Yeah, that works really well.
Great.
And you notice that he reaches for it often, not when he's throwing up, but when he's sitting and he's
Right.
feeling horrible, he'll like put his hand down like it's a comfort. And
Yeah.
so, as you're watching, he sits back down and he goes to, and he notices it's gone, and he looks around like, where is it? But he's also like throwing up, so he can't quite concentrate, but he knows it's gone, and he's very agitated.
So, have I seen any like birds of prey?
Tell
Like
me
something
why.
that could carry this,
Oh, the whip?
the whip. Yeah. I think what I want to do is cut the actual tail of the whip off so it's just the handle.
Mm-hmm.
And if there's any type of owl or anything that's around that could grip it,
Mm-hmm.
like a raptor of some kind,
Mm-hmm.
grip it and have it fly it and drop it in the stew pot.
Okay.
Trying to make this
I
real
think-
like Scooby-Doo spooky.
Spooky. Yep.
Yeah.
I think I can't. I think that's a good idea. I'm thinking through it. You can talk to small creatures. I think I think that counts.
It would and it would probably require like animal handling check of some kind just to see
Okay.
if he's able to
Yeah.
get it in there.
Roll
or
me an
not,
animal
but-
handling check.
Yeah. Okay. The speaking to creatures allows me to even attempt it, I think is the way that
Yeah,
works.
I think that works.
Come on.
What'd you roll?
I rolled a 1. To just fly off with it in a different direction.
I think it does. I think you're like, okay. I want you to take the. Here's what
Okay, Hoppy.
happens. No, here's what happens. Is Sand shows you a nest. You get up there and you're like, hey buddy, and he's like, hi, and you're like, okay, I want you to take this whip handle and drop it in that stew pot over there. And he goes, take the whip handle and fly away. And you're like, no. Take the whip
It's
handle.
like Sokka and his firehawk.
Wait for it. Take the handle and drop it in the stew pot. And he's like, cool.
Yeah.
Stew pot. And he's like, no. I want you to take the handle. I'll take the handle. I want you to fly over to the camp, and drop it in the stew pot. and drop it in the stew pot. Great. I want you to take the handle, fly over to the camp, drop it in the stew pot. Okay. You want me to take the handle and fly away? And then he takes the handle and he flies away. And you're like, no.
Amazing.
That's what
like
happens.
Phoebe and Joey.
Yes, exactly like Phoebe and Joey.
Perfect. I think you kind of like, all right, well,
And
it's gone now.
Sand looks at you like,
Hey,
well,
shut up.
okay. What next, boss?
Oh, speaking of animal handling.
Tyler says, water, Momo. Water. Yeah.
Yeah,
That moment,
exactly.
exactly.
That's exactly what I was thinking of, Tyler.
Yeah.
It's just like everything under the sun.
Yep.
Great. All right, well, then he's going to head back to camp and see what they're up to. If they're...
They're
Are they
still...
all completely occupied at this point?
Yes, except the 4 that are feeling okay. What are you doing?
He came in here and climbed on me and then decided to walk away.
Aaron's cat just climbed up his chest, tried to bite his cable, and then jumped off his shoulder.
Yeah. He got mad I wouldn't let him eat my headphones.
All right, so yeah, they're all completely occupied. The four workers that are completely unaffected are just sort of squatting next to their fellows, and they poke the ones that are unconscious once in a while. And no, because no one's making them go back into the mine. They're just kind of hanging out, and they're on the other side of the camp from the guys who are throwing up, because like they assume if they're uncomfortable, they're gonna blame the workers. So they're kind of like,
or at least take it out on them.
So we're just gonna stay over here, and some of them are eyeing the deer.
Knock the tree down then.
Okay, so I want you to roll me a survival check. And I'm going to use that as a way of figuring out how well you do at carving the tree to get it to roll in the right direction.
Okay.
Or fall in the right direction.
Well...
I will give you advantage because Sand is helping you and you suck at rolling dice.
It's not my fault.
It's your fault. It's literally your fault.
That is... You said a nature? Or
I said a survival, yeah.
14.
Okay. So neither of you die in the process. Let's see how... Yeah, neither of you die in the process. This goes off pretty much without a hitch. I think... So you whittle down until you hear a very ominous crack.
Mm-hmm.
And you actually see the base of the tree down in the earth that you're at tilt. And you hear a Sand hiss. And he's making sort of a... bird noise hiss, so it's part of the forest, but you've been listening for that noise, and he tells you that's to indicate to you like, okay, get out of there.
Yes.
So roll me a dexterity saving throw.
That is unfortunate. That is nat 1.
You rolled a natural 1?
Yeah. Yep. Yep, sure did.
All right.
Oh, I would have put my chainmail back on by this point.
Sure, Okay, so you don't that's actually not good for you. You don't manage to get out of the hole before the tree starts to come down. And so you hear that hiss, you start to scramble out of there, but before you can make it out, Tyler says catastrophe is also part of world lore and history, not just the neat stuff. That's very true.
Yep.
So before you can make it out of there, the tree, you hear many more ominous snap, crackle, pops, and the tree actually sinks down into the hole that you've dug as it's falling. It snaps, shifts, and chunks down into that hole, and it lands right on your tail.
Good. I don't need that for anything.
And you feel the most searing pain. And pressure, and then the tree keeps falling, and you are absorbed in this pain because it's maybe 6 inches from your tail, your butt, and you hear the tree come crashing down. It knocks a bunch of branches out of the way. You hear it hit the hill, and you hear a rumble of the. You hear everybody screaming because it's a large tree, like it's 3 men or two men would have to hug around it
Yeah.
to get it around. And you actually hear it splash down into the stream because it actually crosses the stream.
Mm-hmm.
And it
Not
smashes.
supposed to do that.
What?
You're not supposed to cross the streams.
And it smashes all their sluicing equipment as well that was sort of shoddily built. And they're all screaming. And you're probably screaming as well.
Probably a very loud yell that he tries to clamp down, including putting his hand over his mouth.
Sand is sliding down, and he
Yeah.
sees what's happening, and he looks at you and he says, "It's gonna have to come off. Give me your axe. I have to free you."
No, you're not taking my tail.
You're gonna die. I've seen this happen before, and you've seen it too. If you get trapped under a tree,
Yeah.
you just, like, you gotta...
And there's no way to dig out underneath my tail.
You rolled in that one, dude.
Let's see. You better tourniquet it off first, you idiot.
Of course.
And
he does everything he needs to do, and
yeah.
actually the tree has done a pretty good job of tourniqueting anyway.
Yeah.
It's fairly numb in that area now. And
If you take more than you need to, I'm telling trainee.
he can tell you're kind of trying to joke, you know.
Oh no, he's not joking.
He's very anxious, poor Sand, and
Yeah.
so he cuts it off, and when
Yeah. Tyler looks back at the camp full of shovels. Yep, can't dig up the ground.
you rolled a nat 1.
No, hey, keep going.
And so and it's also, I think, the kind of thing where you have to work quickly because you know, when you trap a limb, the poison sort of back up into your system.
Mm-hmm.
So he chops it right at the base, and when you roll me a Constitution saving throw.
So is he taking the base of the tail off, or is he cutting the tail in half?
He's cutting the tail in half.
Okay.
So you lose
That's
the end, like
Yeah.
you're like tungsten, only it's more of the tail.
Yeah.
So if your tail was 2 feet long, now it's 6 inches long.
Yeah. That's 2 feet to 6 inches. Good grief. 5. You said Constitution
I'll say
saving
1
throw?
foot.
9.
I'll say 1 foot. So your
Yeah.
tail is like half the size now.
Oh, I'm
You
not.
rolled-
I'm not arguing.
You
how
rolled a
lame.
9.
Yeah.
You pass out.
Great. Super
When
good.
when you come to, Sand is looking at you anxiously. What do you do?
How can I tell how much time has passed? Has this been like a few seconds or a couple of hours?
It's been an hour or so. It's closer to evening.
Okay.
The sun has moved in a way where, and you can still hear, you can't hear screams anymore in the distance. I think the clearest noise to you would be the noise the river makes as it burbles up around the tree that's in its path now.
Okay. Well, first thing I would do is check on what's left of my tail.
So you see about a foot. You see where he tied it off, and you see that it's not bleeding, and it's oddly further along with healing, as if it had been healing for a couple of days rather than an hour. And there's a warmth coming from that amber.
I was definitely confused by that. I think he'd reach up and take that amber out and take a look at it.
It's glowing very softly, and the seed inside almost seems to be pulsing. It's not so bright that someone would see it. You know, if it were the dead of night and you were in a cave in the middle of the earth, it would barely cast a glow. It's not even candlelight, but you can tell it's
Well,
glowing.
I think he would take the amber in one hand and his tail in the other and look at it, and like if he's made this connection, he would just kind of do like this and stick the seed on the end of his tail.
It doesn't do anything. Yeah.
I like, all right, and just kind of put it back away and get up and say, well, at least I don't have to brand it closed, and start walking back to see what he can see at the camp.
Sand follows you anxiously, and he's still got your axe, and he kind of like hands it to you, and there's,
He'll take it gruffly and stick it in his holster.
Your own blood's on there, and he says they ran away. The tree came down, and the workers all it actually fell on one of the workers, but I think he was already dead because the rest of them sort of moved. As soon as it came down, like the tree blocked the view of from the dudes in charge, and so they just started shuffling away. They haven't made it very far, and you can hear them. And if you listen really hard, you can hear like gentle clinking. And he's like, but they're headed in the direction of town. So they'll probably be fine. But the dude who was in charge, he started screaming about the forest. And he took the pouch and he chucked it at the tree, and then he ran off into the woods, and the other dude followed him. So I don't think they're coming back. And he says, I have this pouch, and he holds it up, and you look inside. There's maybe 30 or 40 tiny little pieces of this stone that I called Ritsum.
Mm-hmm.
Now, we're getting close to the end of our time, so we're going to wrap up. Is there anything else you want to do in this clearing?
I think before heading out to find somebody to help us neutralize it, I think what he would do is see if he could use that tree as kind of a border to route some of the river into the mines to flood them, and then break that connection so that it's not backing up into the river. But basically make it worthless to anybody else to get in there.
Okay, so...
Which might take, like, some time or days or things like that.
Yeah, what I will actually say is, like, you guys need help. Like, you lost half your tail, and you started blocking a river, and, like, this is beyond you, and you don't quite remember how to neutralize it. But actually, the highest priority for you would be neutralizing it. Not making the ground worthless, but neutralizing it.
Yeah.
So you head back to one of the rare towns for these mouse folk, and you consult with a historian. And you get a crew out there. You do one of your calls. You get all the guys out there. Your tail is healing rapidly. It's not regrowing, but it is healing.
Yeah.
And you get used to the balance after a while. And you haven't lost anything after you get used to it. And so you all get out there, and you take one of the oldest mouse folk you've ever seen out there in easy stages. And he tells you actually that what you need is amber. And that will neutralize the ground here. Is you take, and he says, side effect of the stone forming in this area is that amber is found in high amounts. And so they send out some of the younger folk, and they gather up a bunch of amber. And he says, he's actually a sorcerer of some kind. And so he uses some sort of spell. You don't understand this. You're helping chop up the tree. And so the rest of you are chopping up the trees so you can get it out of the way of the river. And you're building little eddy cuts in the side, and your dredging is not the word I want. You're cleaning the river. You're using these fine nets and picking up all the as many of the particulates. I thought dredging was bad for rivers. You're doing the nice version where you're cleaning up the river and getting all the particulates out. And so you're not part of that crew. I think you're part of the crew that's chopping down the trees, or chopping up the wood, because it takes a while, because you got to cut through. Right. This tree trunk is taller than you and Sand. Sand is actually helping with the dredging, and as they dredge up the stuff, they chuck it into the hole. They dig a new hole and they chuck it in there over by where the mine was. And you can see the dips in the hill now where the paths were that they were. So, like, the whole thing basically collapsed. Yeah. It doesn't look like they shored up any of the death trap, basically.
Good job.
And all of the work is finished about the same time. You're cutting up the wood into small enough pieces that it can be carted off for use by villagers and the townsfolk and stuff. And you'll be set for years and blah, blah, blah. And the river's back to normal. And you have started you are on your way to building quite the reputation. After a couple of days, you keep this stone in your pocket, and after a couple of days, you realize you're feeling, what's the difference between 1 and 3? I don't know. You feel stronger. You feel healthier.
I get criticals easier, I think.
You get more health points. Yeah.
Health points.
It's you find your aim is a little better when you're chopping stuff with the axe. So I want you to think of this as like when you're attuning to the stone. Is when you're sort of in that sort of meditative place you go to when you start chopping at wood, right? Like that rhythmic motion. And that's sort of the state of mind you need to be in to attune to the stone. So once you've done that, your tail heals a lot better. You feel more steady on your feet, and you're able to take more damage and things like that.
Right. So I also get action surge and great weapon fighting.
Yeah, I would call this a level 3. Now, if you ever lose this device, this thingy, you drop back down 2 levels. So keep that in mind.
Got it. Yep.
All right.
Cool.
So that's where we will leave that.
Ta-da!
Yeah, I appreciate you doing this. This one was a little tougher for me because I don't do backwoodsy stuff very, very often. I've noticed that when I'm running these games, I keep putting them in towns and cities and stuff. And when you were like, yes, he's a forester, I started to panic. I was like, what am I going to do? So I think we got to a really interesting place, though, right?
No, I think so, too. Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I liked the idea that we were building up his reputation. This was the very beginning of his reputation.
Right.
I had no idea what kind of magic item I was going to create for this, but I really like the idea.
I really like what you came up with.
Yeah, the amber with the seed, the sort of ancient seed in it sounds really cool. And now I've got a new material I can play with in my world if I can remember the name of it ever. I can come up with something that they use it for, and maybe the amber will pop up later. Maybe it gets polished and set into a rare silver setting. Oh, he's definitely going
to have that set into like a neck piece or something. Like it might even be something that like
it's like a
maybe set into his armor or something like that. Yeah. Like something that he can keep. Like a choker,
collar,
I think is what he's looking for. Yeah, like a collar.
A collar.
Because the necklace is too loose, and the armor, if he takes it off, so it'd be like a choker he never takes off or something.
Maybe like a leather collar that, if he's wearing a shirt, it just sort of looks like part of what he's wearing. But if he takes everything off, it still sits right there, and it's
like
made
like
for
a dickie,
him.
But
yes, like a dickie. Tyler says a reliquary. Kind of.
Not quite.
So this is very cool. What'd you think? How'd that go for you? Work out
good.
Fairly well?
That's real good.
Yeah. You think you'll use this character anywhere?
Yeah, I definitely will. I have some thoughts about if things go certain ways in other games, maybe
pulling him in?
Maybe this is a similar timeline, yeah.
Yeah, so I don't know where in the timeline this would be. I think I'm
really glad we left it kind of agnostic, because depending on how some of the character interactions go in the 2 other games I'm in that you're running in this world, I may need a backup character, and that's
right.
That's fair.
You might pull this one over. That would be kind of cool. That would be. I would be okay with that. All right. Well, I think we will wrap this up by sharing with everyone where we will be seen next. I should have checked on this. I think we're not playing Treasure Tuesday this week because some of those humans are moving. I think that's right. And then
Bard and Barbarian are out this week, I think. Well, we have to check with them. They might be, because I think they're on the road. They may be able to call in.
Depends. We'll see. Pay attention to like Seven Spoon and to find out. And then Broken Band, I think, is not playing either. I might try and do Dungeons and Doggos sometime this week, but we'll see. Luth and I have quite a bit up in the air as well. And then next Sunday, I don't have somebody lined. Do I have anybody lined up for my next brunches? Let me just check real quick. I don't. So I'm going to try and find somebody for next week's brunches. If anybody's watching these and is terribly interested in it, ping me on Twitter. Happy to chat. Tyler says this week is a good time for a crossover. Just saying. Well,
that is something that was mentioned.
That's not a bad idea. Maybe I'll pull in some crossover either from Broken Band or Treasure Tuesday. That could be kind of interesting. Treasure Tuesday is down in the depths, though, so it might have to be another timeline crossover.
Yeah, that could work.
I'll have to think about it, like a back in time or a forward in time. We'll see.
Yeah.
So that's where you can find me. Some of those nights we may play Overwatch or Minecraft or something to fill the
Yep.
the time slot. But so you'll see us. What about you, Luth?
I really want to play Ark again. Like Ark is one of those games I keep going back to, but there's just so much setup involved.
I know. I just spend the entire time trying to build a giant glass house.
I mean, we gave you creative controls last time, so that
I
helped
know it
considerably.
did, but I'd rather go.
Guns.
I'd rather go play around in Minecraft again. I love that place.
No, that's fair.
The place I built. Yeah.
Not much lately. I've not been streaming much on my own. I'm in Treasure Tuesdays on this channel on Tuesdays.
Yep.
Oddly enough. The rest of the games I play aren't really streamed.
That's true. Yep.
I do want to get back into a rhythm of streaming mini painting sometime soon.
Yeah, I think you should
and
do
I have
that.
some projects in the work for that.
Yeah.
And
I think you're
we'll
doing
see how some things shake out.
You're doing a paired stream in September, aren't you?
That is not totally out yet. But
Okay,
yeah. I'm working on a partnership for potentially doing that soon.
Well, we'll make sure we talk about that the next time I've got you on my stream. So, all right.
Yeah.
Well, with that stream, we're going to say not good night, but goodbye. I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your week. Ping me on Twitter if you need anything. And yeah, is that it from you, Luth?
That's it for me.
All right. We'll say bye, stream.
Bye, stream.